Walton at this time. All right, thanks for your testimony and your patience with that long previous item. Ken Crane, President of the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association.
And we're speaking to my motion, correct, Mayor?
I think that is the motion on the table, but I'll accept testimony on
both.
Anything related in that general area. I usually give a lot of leeway.
I think I have some donated time, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of council, thanks for the ability to come here and speak on this issue. It's kind of neat to actually come to a council meeting and actually get up to the mic and be heard. We weren't able to do that the other night. We're in favor of denying the petition, but however, to Councilman DeCicio's point, we don't feel it's necessary at all, but I want to explain to you why we feel that way. As you know, I'm Ken Crane. I'm the president of the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association. We represent about 2,400 rank and file police officers and detectives. We're in opposition to the petition, but we don't believe what's being asked for is necessary because we essentially already have it on several fronts. And I want to speak to that, maybe expand a little bit on what the chief was already talking about. But a lot of people don't realize it, but the city of Phoenix already has civilians integrated into a variety of levels throughout the department and its review processes and procedures. For example, an officer involved in any application of force that results in the death of another person automatically triggers several events. First of all, concurrent investigations by the police department's homicide unit and internal affairs bureau. An immediate review by the county attorney, a civilian elected by the citizens in the county in which they serve, who has representatives that respond to a shooting scene the moment it occurs. They go out there for one reason, and that is to say, are we going to indict or book a cop today? It's investigated as a homicide. If the county attorney, through the review, determines the force was in compliance with state law, and that could take weeks, then the criminal investigation, or months, the criminal investigation ends. However, we're still not done yet. The officer then has to go before a departmental use of force board, also called a UFB, that reviews the application of force to determine if it was in compliance with departmental policy. 3 civilians sit on this panel, along with a peer officer, a commander, and an assistant chief who chairs the committee, as well as resource personnel from the department's legal unit, firearms unit, and tactical training detail who are also present to answer questions of a technical nature if necessary. Any officer who's violated departmental policy, depending on the severity, is subject to internal review by a police department disciplinary review board, or DRB. This is a panel chaired by an assistant chief, staffed with 2 commanders, 2 peer officers, and 2 civilians who review the incident and make discipline recommendations to the chief. Any officer who receives formal discipline in the form of a suspension can appeal the decision to the Civil Service Review Board, a 5-member panel comprised entirely of civilians. These civilians are selected by mayoral appointment. These civilians can decide whether discipline that was imposed should stand, be overturned, or mitigated to a lower level. If the above points are not enough, then consider this. The police chief is directly accountable to the city manager, a civilian, who in turn is directly accountable to the mayor and city council, a panel of civilians. The average person might not give this a lot of thought, but when broken down, it shows there's a lot of civilian review interwoven through many processes at many levels within the police department. Presently, the Phoenix Police Department has a civilian who's the Director of Community Affairs. This person has the equivalent authority of an assistant police chief and reports directly to the chief. What makes police officers wary of an entirely civilian review oversight process is knowing they will be judged by persons who are ill-informed with regard to Supreme Court case law on how force is to be evaluated, as well as relevant state law and justification for use of force, not to mention police department policies. They must have confidence that those who are judging their actions understand the rules and will render decisions based on facts and policy rather than emotion, politics, or the political and community pressure surrounding a given event. Rather than being a department that shuts citizens out, the Phoenix PD has always gone out of its way to be inclusive with regard to having citizens actively engaged on a variety of committees within the department, as well as panels that review officer conduct and discipline. More importantly, the study of officer-involved shootings spanning 2009 to 2014 that was done about a year and a half ago, previously done by the department, was self-initiated by the department rather than compelled, and shows the department's being proactive and transparent with this type of data. And pun intended, when the data came out, there was no smoking gun there. The data showed that we are pretty good on our use of force, that there are probably a lot fewer shootings than most people believe, and that our force comports with policies and state law. Maybe one of the most compelling pieces of evidence that shows the type of civilian involvement in the Phoenix PD is working is that unlike other major American police departments around the nation, the Phoenix PD has never been close to being placed under a consent decree by the U.S. Department of Justice. I think it's also important to note how other professional career fields evaluate complaints of misconduct in comparison. For example, a medical doctor accused of misconduct has their conduct reviewed by a state medical board comprised of medical professionals, not a citizen review panel. A commercial airline pilot accused of misconduct has their conduct reviewed by the Federal Aviation Administration, professionals with aviation backgrounds, not a citizen review panel. A lawyer accused of ethical misconduct has their conduct reviewed by the State Bar Association, an investigative body comprised of legal professionals, not a citizen review panel. A nurse accused of misconduct has their conduct reviewed by the State Board of Nursing, a board comprised of medical professionals with years of experience in the nursing profession, not a citizen review panel. I could go on and on with these examples. Law enforcement's the same. A peace officer accused of serious misconduct has their actions reviewed by the Arizona Peace Officer Standards and Training Board, also known as AZ Post, a statewide regulatory agency for law enforcement. It is comprised of law enforcement professionals who have the ability to suspend or revoke certifications of peace officers, and they do so with regularity. Here's the point. Doctors, nurses, and airline pilots can all make mistakes that cause serious injury or death. Yet they are regulated by peers who are professionals within the same career field. Why then the belief and constant pressure among some that law enforcement has to be reviewed by a civilian panel with no firsthand knowledge of what the job entails, people that have never walked a mile in our shoes and know how to do what we do? The system we have in place is working, and it's been working. There's no need to reinvent the wheel by adding extra layers of unnecessary review in the process. And as a final point, I want to add one thing that I tacked onto my comments. I wasn't going to speak to it, about the evil police unions that protect the bad cops. Over the last several years, the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association has assisted in walking numerous officers out the door that just didn't need to be in this career anymore. It's a hard thing to do, but we have done it. And it's hard to look somebody in the eye and say, you crossed the line a little too far. You need to move on. And we have done that because we don't want people in the ranks that don't deserve to be here any more than a citizen doesn't want them here. So that's the final point I want to make. Thank you for your time.
Mayor? Thank you very much.
Mayor.
President Crane? I think Councilman Williams, did you have a question for President Crane?
No, actually, I want to thank him. I think his presentation was excellent and explains how our police department operates and how conscientious we are about making sure that every deed is examined thoroughly and is done not only by professionals but by civilians. So I am supporting Councilman DeCicio's motion wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Councilman Waring?
Just a couple weeks ago, we had a rather contentious meeting, and I think I tried to emphasize at the time that you can't expect perfection out of anybody because nobody is perfect, and that includes our police officers. They have to make a lot of snap judgments in a very tough profession with a lot of stress. A lot of times late at night, anybody who's gone on a ride-along, particularly at night, It's a whole different world, so civilians like me who have never been a police officer, understand that this is just a different, this is a different working environment than those of us who go to an office and so forth have to deal with. So I appreciated Ken's comments regarding, the expertise and having people on there who have actually done the job and understand what that entails. Because I felt that with our soldiers too, that we do too much just second guessing. You had a tenth of a second to react, and now we've got video and so forth, and so we know what happened, and now you can't get that out of your head. And so you got to put yourself in the officer's position. It's just a constant second guessing. The chief had to ask us for dispensation to go find potential officers from around the country. We had to bump up the marketing because we're making it an unattractive job. And that is not good for any of us. I don't care what you think about the police. And I heard things I thought were really offensive a couple weeks ago. Domestic terrorists and just some things that I just really thought were way over the line for what any reasonable person should be saying. But you just don't want to make it so that people just don't want to do this work. Yes, there have been people, there were 3 just recently who lost their certifications who deserve to lose them. There have been times with these boards that have been discussed that realistically I thought that punishment wasn't quite enough, but there have been equal number of times where I thought, wow, they were really hard on that officer. I thought, they should get a little bit of leeway. But in all cases, I recognize it's a tough job, and I don't believe any of the officers, maybe there are a few exceptions, are going out and thinking, I'm going to go hurt somebody tonight, or I'm going to go commit a crime today. I don't think that's probably what's in people's heads when they're going out there. Circumstances take over. Some people, as Ken said, have to be removed. There have been people since I've been on this council who have gone to prison, who have been police officers, and that's obviously terrible. But the system, as I've seen it, I think as Councilman Stark had indicated, has worked pretty well. Again, the systems aren't perfect either because they're created by people who also aren't perfect. These aren't mental health professionals. These aren't doctors. We cannot expect them to know everything about everything. That is not a reasonable expectation. So I did look at this as another way to try to, sort of get the result that people are wanting, when the results that have been achieved now, I think have been by and large pretty just and fair. But regardless, to have people who have no experience doing this kind of work getting up and critiquing and going over, knowing how things turned out, I don't think that's fair. And so I guess I would just hope the council would take that under consideration. And the end result would be, if you do too much of this, you're going to have a hard time getting good people to want to do the job. And that's not good for anybody. Thank you.
Mayor?
Thank you very much. Councilman DeCiccio, we have cards here to continue to go, but did you want to have additional questions?
Thank you.
For Ken Crane, please.
I want to echo what Councilwoman Williams had said. I mean, it was amazing, your presentation, one of the best ones we've heard here, because you walked everybody through how much oversight there already is over the police department. And if there's ever an issue, the county attorney has that oversight as well. So if you look at that, what I'm concerned about, though, is the fact of this constant dribble, this constant attack. We saw what the individuals who want this, and it always sounds nice to hear civilian oversight. We've already got a lot of it, like a ton of it already out there. And what they're doing is they're just saying they want another shot at our officers and attacking them. And we saw what those individuals wanted 2 weeks ago. We saw them. They were in here. They were attacking our officers. That is what was happening here at the City of Phoenix. And not to just end this now, finish it and complete it, and leave our officers alone. If they do anything wrong, we will be on top of them, I promise you. I mean, we've been at odds on things, right? So I'm telling you, right now, it is time for this to come to an end, this constant dribble, this constant attack, this constant fear that we're trying to put into our police officers, like Councilwoman Waring had just said over here, is that no one will ever want to be a police officer. Who do you think protects us? I mean, who is out there watching our homes? I feel comfortable when I see a man or a woman in blue. I feel comfortable. I'm one of those guys. I feel okay with it. My kids feel comfortable. My family feels comfortable with them. They've done a great job. We saw what the attacks have done. We had national accolades of how great and how well, Chief, your people and you have handled the protest that was there. National awards, national accolades on that. What happened? We heard people come back and say how bad it was and how they were gassed, they were attacked. And that never happened. That is what these individuals are looking for. They want a shot at our officers, they want to shut them down, they want to make sure that they can't do their jobs, and they want to prevent others from getting on there. Because these individuals want to control our police department. It's time for this thing to come to an end, finish it, leave our officers alone. If they do something wrong, we will be on them, but they haven't. They've done a great job. God bless every one of you guys, men and women in blue, for everything you've done for our